Carl Larsson is without doubt Sweden's most beloved artist. He's best known as the originator of the Swedish style, together with his remarkable wife and partner, Karin Bergö, a textile artist, furniture designer, and painter. The aesthetic they developed together at their residence, located in the central Swedish village of Sundborn, has even been honored by IKEA with an eponymous sofa. Carl and Karin Larsson were one of numerous Nordic couples working in the decades around 1900. Hi, I'm Michelle Fakos, an internationally renowned and award-winning expert on Scandinavian art. I've been lecturing and writing about Nordic art for decades, and am a dual American and Swedish citizen living part-time in Stockholm. I'm excited to share with you my research gleaned from books, journals, letters, and conversations with other experts. I know how hard it is to find out about Scandinavian art because I had to learn to read Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, and German to do it. Are you with me? Then let's get started. Larsson was born into a poverty-stricken family in Stockholm. His mother struggled to support her family as a laundress, while his alcoholic father worked only sporadically. When Larsson was 13, a perceptive teacher recognized his artistic talent and recommended he apply to the Royal Academy of Art in Stockholm, where he began studies in 1875. As you see, Larsson began with life drawing and still life painting, a practice that continues in art academies today. His side hustles, producing caricatures for the humor magazine Kaspar and illustrations for the newspaper Ny Illustrerad Tidning, enabled him to single-handedly support his family. Larsson apparently enjoyed caricature, because the numerous cards and letters he wrote throughout his life are filled with them. He had a wicked sense of humor. Larsson's most important painting from his time at the Academy was the 15th century historical subject Sten Sture freeing Danish Queen Christina from imprisonment at Vadstena Cloister. This was the topic assigned in the competition for the Academy's prestigious travel scholarship, which Larsson won. The scene represents a pivotal moment in Sweden's struggle for independence from the Kalmar Union of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, which was established at the end of the 14th century and controlled by Denmark. It was a power move on the part of Sten Sture to liberate the queen of the country from which Sweden sought independence. Here, Larsson conformed to the expected historical accuracy in setting and costume and the convention of depicting such subjects with theatrical drama. While Queen Christina looks towards Sture, who has just entered the room and with his open hands indicates he is there on a benevolent mission, Christina turns away toward the nun, as if suspicious of his intentions. The theatrical lighting that illuminates the main action helps viewers to interpret the story. Despite his success, Larsson was frustrated by the Swedish Art Academy's rigid curriculum, as were several of his classmates. Together, they departed for Paris in 1877, eager to immerse themselves in the French capital's vibrant cultural life. To them, Stockholm felt like a backwater far from the dynamic cultural life in continental capitals. They wanted to prove their worth by exhibiting and winning medals at the prestigious annual Salon exhibitions in Paris. And they wanted to find appreciative customers to buy their works. Not only were there no regularly occurring art exhibitions in Stockholm at the time and no real art galleries, but the main purchasers of art, the state and the nobility, preferred conventional historical subjects, portraits, Dutch-style landscapes, and reassuring images of happy peasants. Although he visited the Impressionist exhibitions that occurred in Paris between 1877 and 1886, he seemed a little interested in either the subject matter or technical innovations of these renegade French artists. For Larsson and his Nordic colleagues, success at the Salon meant everything. In Paris, Larsson initially continued to paint in the conventional manner in which he had been trained. These two paintings show Larsson searching for subjects that would attract buyers. Light Dark depicts a scene that displays the era's attitude toward gender, with the naive girl looking inquisitively at her companion as she grasps the very real-looking sword. The boy, holding his possession tightly, responds to her action with a reproachful glare. At the Witches, adopted a more traditional approach in a subject inspired by folk tales. As in Light Dark, Larsson paired youthful female ignorance with a more knowledgeable figure, although portraying an adult woman as a witch certainly fueled the era's understanding of women as deceitful, manipulative, and evil. 4 years later, this painting, with an enigmatic title, Resignation, the Last Religion, indicates the content of the book displayed, The Angel of Fate, which Larsson had been commissioned to illustrate. But its subject is a traditional still life painted with the kind of exacting detail one expects from a 17th century Dutch painting by an artist like Peter Claes. Both artists depict a vanitas motif, a reminder of life's brevity, indicated by skulls, and also in the case of Larsson, a dried up and dying potted flower. Larsson's reveals his skill representing three-dimensional objects on a two-dimensional canvas by having a paper printed in French drooping over the edge of the chair seat. In 1883, not only were Larsson's paintings accepted by the Salon jury, but he won a third-class medal for October and November. He painted these watercolors during the summers of 1882 and 1883, while staying in bucolic Grès-sur-Loing, 50 kilometers southeast of Paris. He had been invited to join the summer colony of Nordic artists by his academy friend, Carl Nordstrom. The summer of 1882 was decisive for Larsson, more than professionally. It was then and there that he met Karin Berger, a merchant's daughter from central Sweden. Karin belonged to the robust sisterhood of Nordic artists living in Paris during the 1870s and 80s. She married Carl in 1883, and their first child, Suzanne, arrived a year later. The closely knit Nordic artists community in Paris often compared life there to life at home. The Swedes became so annoyed with the lack of opportunities at home that in 1885 they decided to unionize, inspired by the Impressionists, who based the bylaws of their organization, the Anonymous Society of Artists, Painters, Sculptors, Engravers, etc., on those of the Bakers' Union of Pontoise, where Impressionist Camille Pissarro lived. These 84 men and women first called themselves the Opponents, a name they later changed to the Artists' Union. In May 1885, 2 weeks after the Royal Academy denied the Opponents' request to reorganize, their exhibition, called By the Banks of the Seine, opened. It was more successful financially than any of the Impressionist shows had been, inspiring them to hold a second exhibition, boldly called The Opponents. Artists' Union members considered themselves patriotic workers, manual laborers whose materials were canvas, brush, and paint. They saw the suffering caused by rapid industrialization, and as conscientious, engaged citizens, they wanted to contribute to the formation of an egalitarian, democratic society in which the survival needs of every citizen were met and everyone had the opportunity to develop in healthy symbiosis with nature and their fellow citizens. Larsson, who knew the physical and psycho-emotional damage of extreme poverty from personal experience, contributed in two ways. By using his home as an instrument of propaganda for a kinder, more harmonious society, where every member is encouraged to thrive according to their own individual urges, and also by creating educational wall paintings and inspiring public art. In 1888, Karin's father gave the couple a property located in the village of Sundborn, not far from the provincial capital of Falun, that he had inherited from a maiden aunt. This two-story log cottage became a cauldron of creativity for the entire Larsson family. Not only did they create works in the studio spaces, but the home itself became a work of art and a political manifesto that expressed the values of authenticity, practicality, and collaboration embraced by 20th century Swedes. The house transformed over the years, as you see by comparing recent photographs to the watercolors painted by Larsson in the mid-1890s. But now let's take a look at his public commissions. Larsson's first public commission was to create a series of frescoes depicting the history of women in Sweden for the stairwell of the newly opened new elementary school for girls in Göteborg, Sweden's second largest city. It was Sweden's first ever mural project for a public school. The Göteborg collector, Pontus Fürstenberg, funded the project. Fürstenberg was a major supporter of the Artists' Union and paid for the project at the request of the feminist educator Hedda Kay, sister of the famous feminist socialist author and educator Ellen Kay. Hedda suggested the theme, The Swedish Woman Through the Ages, and collaborated with Larsson to select specific subjects. Larsson completed the paintings during the winter of 1890-91. In the entrance, he imagined prehistoric woman, Viking Age woman, and Saint Bridget, the founder of Sweden's first convent in the 14th century. Elsewhere, he depicted Fredrika Bremer, the early 19th century Swedish author, feminist, and philanthropist. Surrounding them, he inscribed the values he hoped his images would instill: diligence, obedience, kindness, truth, and piety. In 1894, Larsson won the scandal-ridden competition to decorate the entry hall of Stockholm's National Museum with a proposal entitled Everything for the Homeland. The frescoes documented state support for the arts in the 17th and 18th centuries. On the left here, we see Nicodemus Tessin the Younger, architect of Stockholm's royal palace, conferring with his successor, Carl Horleman, and on the right, the 18th century poet Carl Michael Bellman playing music while visiting the studio of his friend, Swedish neoclassical sculptor Johann Tobias Sergel. The figures, in costumes appropriate for their times, are shown at historically significant moments in their careers. At center, we see a photograph of Larsson himself turning toward us on the scaffolding while the project was in progress. The National Museum project secured Larsson's status as Sweden's premier mural painter. During the next decade, Larsson painted decorations in Stockholm schools, its opera house, and the Royal Dramatic Theatre. But his National Museum project wasn't finished. The museum board decided to decorate the second floor stairwell. In 1904, it approved Larsson's design from 1891, documented by this photo showing Larsson with his preparatory sketch. It depicted the arrival of Gustav Vasa in Stockholm in 1523. Although not Sweden's first king, Gustav Vasa is celebrated as the founder of the modern Swedish state. Larsson depicted him in armor and mounted on a white steed as he passes through a temporary triumphal arch. He's accompanied by his army and the royal Swedish flag, 3 gold crowns against a blue background. They are greeted by an appreciative crowd standing outside Stockholm's city wall. Larsson's proposal for the opposite wall met with determined resistance. Midwinter Sacrifice shows the most dramatic scene from a Norse legend about a devastating famine. Because animal sacrifices had produced no results, Viking King Dolmade offered to sacrifice himself. Larsson carefully studied historical sources in order to accurately represent the event. In 1911, his sketch won first prize at an exhibition in Rome, Italy, but after making adjustments and submitting 4 versions of the subject between 1906 and 1915, the museum trustees decided to reject it. Larsson was devastated. In 1987, the museum sold the painting to a Japanese collector. The collector later lent it to the National Museum in 1992 for the museum's bicentennial celebration. When it was time to return the painting, Swedish citizens objected. After 5 years of negotiations, the museum repurchased the painting, and it now hangs in the place Larsson intended. In the 1880s, Larsson and Fürstenberg formed strong bonds of friendship. The collector invited the artist to be the teacher at Valand, an art school established in Sweden's second largest city, Göteborg, a school that still thrives. Fürstenberg intended it as a progressive rival to the stodgy Royal Academy in Stockholm, whose curriculum had changed little since the 18th century when it was established. But Larsson was more interested in painting than in teaching. When Fürstenberg commissioned Larsson to decorate the entrance to his gallery in 1888, the artist proposed a triptych illustrating the progress of art from the Renaissance to the Rococo to contemporary art. So enthusiastic was Fürstenberg that he offered the artist a year of financial support to complete the large work in Paris, where it would appear in the Swedish section of the 1889 Paris World's Fair. It didn't take long for Carl and Karin to pack off the children to her parents in Hallsberg and to rejoin the community of expat Nordic artists in Paris. In his compositions, Larsson emulated the style and subject matter of the period in question. Rococo shows a romantic encounter set in a garden and painted in the pastel colors, feathery brushwork, and undulating forms of the 18th century style. Renaissance, in contrast, is set within an architectural framework that evokes Raphael's School of Athens in the Vatican. Its muse, wearing the white dress of purity, is honored by kneeling figures that flank her. Contemporary art was painted mostly outdoors from the elevated vantage point of nearby Meudon. The natural setting and nude model suggest that nature is the current source of artistic inspiration. That Larsson captured a specific moment in time is substantiated by the presence of the Eiffel Tower, still under construction, beneath the Red Arrow. He and Karin spent several happy weeks in Gray during the summer of 1888, where Larsson painted much of the outdoor setting for both Rococo and contemporary art. Larsson's most famous and beloved project, though, were the 26 watercolors he painted of his home and family in the central Swedish village of Sundborn during rainy summers in the late 1890s. A Home became an international bestseller and the source of the IKEA aesthetic. Larsson didn't expect readers to emulate the appearance of his home, but rather to imitate its authenticity, the way it reflected the changing tastes, interests, and lifestyle of the family who lived there. In his introduction, Larsson advised readers, quote, "Swedes, save yourselves. Become simple and dignified. Be awkward rather than elegant. Dress in leather, fur, and wool. Make household goods compatible with your lifestyle. Cover everything in strong colors, those so-called gaudy colors that are necessary contrasts to the deep green forests and the cold white snow. Let your hand naturally carve or paint on your furnishings the embellishments you like. Then you will be happy in the feeling of being yourself," end quote. Larsson encouraged Swedes to abandon pretension and imitation in favor of authenticity, which alone would lead to a happy, healthy, and harmonious family and to a respectful and egalitarian society. He and Karin would no doubt have been thrilled by their aesthetic legacy, one embraced far beyond the Swedish borders. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the thumbs up button and check out my other Scandinavian art videos. If you'd like to support my project or keep current with new videos, please subscribe to my channel. Leave comments and questions in the section below, and check out my website for related articles, books, lectures, and blog posts. What would you like to learn about Scandinavian art?